On Christmas Eve, a millionaire single dad pulled over near a bakery to buy his daughter a cookie. But what he saw behind the dumpster shattered his heart. A young homeless woman freezing digging through trash, not for food, but clutching a tattered notebook like it was her last piece of home. His little girl asked one question that changed everything, Daddy. Can she have dinner with us? What followed was a journey of healing love and second chances so powerful it would rewrite all their lives. Stay with us, because this story will reach into your soul and never let go. It was Christmas Eve in the small town of Millfield, Illinois, the kind of place where holiday lights glittered on every porch and the air smelled like pine needles and chimney smoke. Downtown carolers sang under gas lamps, while couples strolled hand in hand, their laughter rising with each snowflake that floated down. But inside Daniel Cooper's black SUV, there was silence, until a small voice pierced through it. "Dad, I'm hungry. You said there'd be cookies." Daniel glanced in the rearview mirror at his daughter, Lily barely 6 years old, her cheeks rosy from the cold. She was tracing hearts in the fog on the window with her mittened fingers. He checked the dashboard clock. 6:42 p.m. Christmas Eve. Most stores were closing, families already home with their pies and presents. He exhaled and muttered, "All right, kiddo, let's find something sweet." He turned down Maple Street and pulled up in front of Sugar Bell Bakery, one of those quaint little shops that looked like it belonged inside a snow globe. Glowing warmly behind frosted windows, the smell of cinnamon and gingerbread wafting out the door. But before he could open his door, Lily gasped. "Daddy, who's that?" Daniel followed her gaze. Behind the bakery, next to a green dumpster rimmed with frost, crouched a woman. She looked no older than her mid-20s, but the years had etched hardship across her pale face. Her coat was torn at the elbow, her boots looked 2 sizes too big, and her hands, bare despite the bitter air, were carefully digging through a trash bag. Daniel froze. Lily pressed closer to the window. "Is she looking for food?" He hesitated, jaw tightening. Then he sighed, shoved open the door, and stepped out into the biting wind. "Excuse me," he called, approaching slowly. His breath fogged the air. The snow crunched beneath his shoes. The woman flinched but didn't run. She turned to face him, clutching something to her chest. Not a wallet, not food, but a tattered notebook, its corners curled and stained, bound by a single fraying elastic strap. "I'm not stealing," she said softly. Her voice was calm but rehearsed, like someone who'd said this more times than she could count. "I'm just hungry. I don't want trouble." Daniel looked at the book, then back at her. "It's a cookbook," she said, her voice dropping. "It's mine." He didn't reply. He didn't know what to say. Then another sound, louder, lighter, broke the tension. Lily's boots hit the sidewalk as she ran up behind him. "Daddy, it's cold. Are we getting cookies?" He instinctively stepped in front of her, shielding her from the woman. But Lily peeked out from behind his coat. Her eyes were curious, not afraid. "Are you hungry?" she asked the woman. The woman blinked, stunned by the question. Lily turned to Daniel. "Can she have dinner with us?" Daniel stared at his daughter. His practical mind scrambled for a reason to say no, but she was already reaching out her mittened hand, offering it to a stranger, like they were old friends. The woman, Emily, though neither of them knew it yet, looked at Lily's outstretched hand like it was a miracle. Daniel cleared his throat, unsure if he was about to make a mistake or the best decision of his life. "Let's get you warm," he said. Emily nodded slowly. She carefully slipped the notebook inside her coat like it was something sacred, then followed them to the car. Lily scooted over in the back seat without hesitation, tugging her fuzzy blanket across her lap and patting the space beside her. Emily climbed in, shivering. "Thank you," she whispered. As the car warmed, Daniel glanced in the mirror. Emily sat quietly, her hands wrapped around the notebook, her eyes closed. Lily leaned against her, humming, something off-key. He didn't know her story, but something about the way she held that book, the way she breathed like the warmth itself might vanish if she moved too fast. He couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a coincidence. He turned into the driveway of his suburban home. The snow was falling again, layering over the hedges and steps like a fresh start. Emily stared out the window, her breath fogging the glass. The house loomed tall and golden, stone columns, arched windows glowing with light. It was everything she hadn't had for a very long time. Lily jumped out and called back, Come on, we'll make cookies. Emily stepped slowly out of the car, the snow crunching beneath her. She hugged her coat tighter, her eyes flicked up to the windows. Joy echoed from inside, a warmth that scared her more than the cold ever had. Daniel opened the door. She hesitated only a moment and stepped inside. The air hit her like a wave, warm, buttery, alive. Hardwood floors, soaring ceilings, framed pictures on the wall of a life that felt like a fairy tale. A smiling woman, a giggling baby, a man holding both. Daniel glanced back at her. Kitchen's this way. You're welcome to eat, rest, whatever you need. Emily nodded, but the way she looked around said something louder than words. I don't belong here. In the corner, Lily twirled, already grabbing a mixing bowl. Daniel stepped into the kitchen, and Emily followed, tired, cautious, holding on to a single notebook, and a sliver of something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. The kitchen was a space of silence and shine. Stainless steel appliances gleamed beneath pendant lights, and pale marble countertops stretched out like pristine canvases waiting to be touched. Emily stood near the threshold, hovering like a shadow, her fingers brushing the edge of her worn coat. Daniel watched her from the corner of his eye. He didn't know what he expected. Awkwardness, confusion, maybe even embarrassment, but not the quiet command she carried as her eyes scanned the fridge. Make whatever you want, he offered, gesturing toward the open fridge. There's plenty. She nodded without looking at him, as if she'd already chosen. One hand reached for leftover rotisserie chicken, another for a bunch of carrots, then a bundle of fresh thyme. Within moments she moved with purpose. No hesitation, no noise, just rhythm. The way she chopped the carrots, uniform, clean strokes. The way she turned the burner to just the right heat. The way her hands fluttered over the pan like she was taming fire instead of just cooking dinner. It all looked practiced, intuitive even. Sacred. Daniel leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, brow furrowed. He couldn't look away. From the living room, Lily's voice floated in. Daddy, it smells so good. Daniel didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the pot in front of Emily. She added broth and let it shimmer, a pinch of salt, a dash of something golden. Then she stirred slowly, the steam rising and curling like ghosts of forgotten moments. Emily ladled the soup into 3 ceramic bowls and placed them on the table. Lily was the first to dive in. She said, kicking her little legs under the table. It's yummy. It tastes like hugs. Daniel sat across from her. He took a cautious bite and froze. His heart skipped. It was her soup, not Emily's, his wife's. Carrot and thyme with roasted chicken, perfectly balanced, rich yet light. It wasn't just similar. It was identical. Down to the mouthfeel, the warmth that hit the back of the throat, the subtle undertone of lemon. It hit him like a memory too strong to carry. He set the spoon down and looked up. You've made this before. Emily's spoon paused midair. She didn't meet his eyes. A long time ago, she said. The silence between them thickened. There was something else she wasn't saying, but Daniel didn't push. He couldn't. Not when Lily had already climbed into Emily's lap, curling against her coat like she'd always belonged there. You're like a snow angel, Lily whispered, nestling in, close. Emily let out a soft breath of laughter. It wasn't polished or sweet. It was real, cracked and warm, the kind of laugh that startled even herself. Daniel watched them, his daughter resting peacefully in the arms of a stranger. And not just any stranger. One who felt oddly familiar. One who carried sorrow in her eyes and comfort in her hands. Later that night, Lily had fallen asleep on a pile of storybooks in the living room, a blanket pulled up to her chin and her thumb tucked under her cheek. Daniel turned off the TV, lowered the lights, and walked back toward the kitchen. Emily wasn't there. He found her instead at the wide front window, sitting on the bench seat, legs folded beneath her, the old notebook resting on her lap. She'd opened it and was gently running her fingers over the yellowed pages. Some were torn, others frayed at the edges. A few were marked with old wine stains and faded handwriting. Daniel paused in the hallway. She didn't know he was there, and he didn't want to interrupt. She looked like someone standing in the past, holding pieces too delicate to speak aloud. In that stillness, Daniel saw something he hadn't before. This woman, this mysterious cook who had wandered into his life from behind a dumpster. She wasn't broken. She was buried, and someone had just needed to dig gently enough to find the light beneath. When she closed the book, she held it to her chest like a heartbeat. Daniel backed away without a word, returning to the kitchen, where the soup pot still sat on the stove, glowing faintly. That night, the house smelled like thyme citrus and something deeper. Not just food, not just comfort, but memory. A memory made new. The next morning, the sun cut through frost-dusted windows, and Emily was already in the kitchen when Daniel came downstairs. She wore one of his flannel shirts over her thin clothes, her sleeves rolled up, her hair tied in a messy knot. The skillet sizzled with pancake batter, and the scent of coffee curled through the air like a morning hymn. "Morning, little chef," Emily said, as Lily patted in, rubbing her eyes. "Pancakes?" Lily asked, already smiling. "With blueberries," Emily grinned. "Coming right up." Daniel stood silently at the threshold, taking it all in. The easy way they moved together, the way Lily giggled, the way Emily hummed to herself without realizing it. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It just felt like home. Later, as Lily devoured a stack of syrup-drenched pancakes and chattered about everything from reindeer to rocket ships, Emily said something soft but certain. "Food isn't just food," she murmured. "It's a memory you can taste. It holds people together, even after they're gone." Daniel looked up from his coffee, watching her carefully. There was a shadow behind her words, but also strength. He didn't press, not yet, but something inside him stirred, a flicker of warmth in the place where grief had long gone cold. Emily cleared the dishes, humming quietly, a song Daniel half recognized but couldn't place. The song didn't matter. What mattered was the way it made the silence feel less empty, and how for the first time in a long time he didn't mind sharing the morning. January came with ice-laced windows and a quiet that settled over Millfield like a blanket. Snow covered rooftops and muffled the roads, but inside Daniel's house something was slowly waking up. Not just the fireplace crackling or the scent of warm cinnamon drifting from the oven. Something deeper. Something alive. It had been 7 weeks since Emily first stepped through Daniel's front door, and though no formal agreement had been made, she had quietly become part of the rhythm of the house. It started with small things, like folding Lily's pajamas and tucking them neatly under her pillow each morning, or refilling the coffee maker before Daniel even stumbled into the kitchen, still half asleep, or writing down meal plans on a chalkboard she found in the basement, turning their once aimless dinners into small, cozy rituals. Daniel never asked her to stay, and Emily never said she was staying, but the days kept coming, and she kept being in them. It was in the way she moved, never claiming space, only borrowing it gently, leaving it better than she found it. She never tried to change the house. She just made it warmer. And Lily bloomed. She wasn't just eating again. She was laughing, asking questions, baking cookies, reading books out loud while Emily stirred sauces on the stove. There were nights Daniel found them building pillow forts in the living room, Lily giggling while Emily defended the castle with a spatula and a colander for a helmet. Emily had found a way to fill the cracks left behind after Daniel's wife died, without ever trying to replace her. One cold Saturday afternoon, Daniel came home from a meeting to find the living room lit with nothing but candles. On the coffee table, Lily's favorite stuffed bear sat, with a tiny party hat made from foil. "What's going on?" Daniel asked, arching a brow. "It's Bear's birthday," Lily said proudly. Emily grinned, her hair pulled back, a smudge of flour on her cheek. "We made cupcakes." Bear's birthday. Cupcakes. Laughter. Daniel sat down and realized it had been months since the house had felt like this. Like a home. That night, as Lily slept with her cupcake-smeared bear tucked beneath one arm, Daniel stood at the threshold of Emily's borrowed guest room. The door was open just enough to see her inside, sitting on the bed, her notebook open on her lap. She wasn't writing, she was just staring at a recipe. And he realized something: she didn't just cook from memory. She lived in those pages. That night he didn't sleep much. His heart was starting to whisper things his logic didn't want to hear. She's still a stranger. She's still temporary. But somehow, she's yours. The next morning brought an unexpected tenderness. Lily sat at the kitchen table, wrapped in a blanket, coloring with crayons, while Emily chopped apples for oatmeal. "Juan de Stand for expertide. You make this house smile," Lily said softly, not looking up. Emily paused, the knife still in her hand. "What did you say, sweetheart?" Lily shrugged. "Before you came, it was quiet. But not nice quiet, like sad quiet. Now it's better." Emily looked away quickly, blinking fast. Daniel heard it too, from the hallway, and something clenched in his chest. Later that day, while Lily was outside making snow angels, Daniel finally found the words. "You've been here. What's 7 weeks now?" Emily nodded slowly. "I can leave if it's too long." "No," he interrupted firmly. "That's not what I meant." She looked at him, searching his face for the hidden motive. He didn't have one. "Only truth. You've changed things here," he said, "for the better." She folded her arms. "I don't want to overstay." "You haven't—" Silence stretched between them like a fragile bridge. Then, for the first time, Daniel asked gently, "What do you want, Emily?" She looked down at her hands, then toward the window, where Lily was still dancing in the snow. "I want to believe there's still a place for me, somewhere," she said quietly. "Not as a guest, not as someone people pity, but someone needed." Daniel didn't answer. Not with words. He just nodded once, then turned and left the room. But in the hallway just out of her sight, he smiled, because for the first time in years he realized he needed her too. One evening, Emily was sitting in the living room while Lily played with her toys. Daniel brought in an old wooden box, one he hadn't opened in years. "I thought you might want to see this," he said, placing it on the coffee table. Inside were handwritten recipes, his wife's. Some were faded, others torn. A few matched dishes Emily had made without ever seeing them. She looked up at him, eyes wide. "I guess good cooks think alike," he said softly. Emily reached into the box and pulled out a page. The handwriting was delicate. It read, "Roasted butternut bisque, Daniel's favorite." There was a heart drawn in the corner. Emily's fingers trembled. "Was she began, then stopped." Daniel nodded. "She was kind, quiet, brave." "Sounds familiar," Emily whispered, glancing down. And then she smiled, a real one this time. Warm. "Sure." By the end of February, the house didn't just feel better. It felt whole. Daniel still hadn't said the words. Neither had Emily. But every meal, every shared glance, every time Lily snuggled into Emily's side like she belonged there, they were building something. Not fast, not forced, but real. And in that quiet space between grief and healing, something remarkable had begun to grow. It was the first Friday in March when Daniel finally asked the question he'd been carrying like a stone in his chest for weeks. They were alone in the kitchen, the windows fogged from the steam rising off the pot on the stove. Outside, the last of winter clung to the trees, icicles slowly weeping into puddles. Inside, the scent of tomato and garlic filled the air as Emily stirred a pot of bisque. Daniel leaned against the counter, arms folded, watching her. "Emily," he said quietly. She didn't turn. "Yeah, you don't belong on the streets." This time she did pause. The ladle hung in midair just for a breath, then dipped back into the pot. Slow, steady circles, stirring not just the soup, but something far deeper. Daniel continued. "I mean, you move like someone trained, like a professional. And that notebook, it's not scraps, it's work, real work." Emily exhaled through her nose, then set the ladle down. She turned, arms folded, leaning back slightly against the stove. Her face was calm, but her eyes carried storms. "I used to be a chef," she said. "Well, almost." Daniel didn't interrupt. She continued, voice quiet but sharp. "I was a line cook at a downtown restaurant, one of those trendy places with a 6-month wait list. I was the youngest on the team, 21. I worked twice as hard for half the credit. But I had this idea. Flavor pairings no one was using. I tested, experimented, scribbled notes in my book. Some of them stuck." She glanced toward the living room, where Lily's laughter echoed faintly. Daniel waited. "I was proud," she said. "Felt like I was building something. Then this guy, another chef older, he starts praising my ideas, publicly, said I was a rising star. I thought it meant something." Her voice dropped lower. "But he stole one of my recipes. Entered it in a televised competition, won, used my words, my seasoning, even my plating." Daniel's jaw tightened. "What did you do?" I confronted him, brought it to the executive chef, told them I had notes, sketches, proof, but the guy had friends, investors, PR people. I didn't. She looked down, lips pressed tight. The next day I was let go. A week later, headlines hit. Plagiarist young chef caught stealing award-winning recipe. My name was all over the wrong kind of news. Daniel felt his breath catch. Emily wasn't just telling a story. She was confessing a burial. I tried clearing my name. No one listened. I went from restaurant hopeful to industry poison overnight. Daniel stepped closer but said nothing. Emily's voice cracked just slightly. My parents were embarrassed. They told me to lay low. Then they stopped answering my calls. There was silence. Deep, thick, painful. I couch surfed, she continued. Slept in cars, lost my ID, lost everything really, except the notebook. It's all I had. Some nights I just read through the recipes so I wouldn't forget who I was before it all went dark. Daniel swallowed. How long ago was that? 3 years, she said. 3 long, hungry, invisible years. She looked up. I'm not telling you this for pity. I know, he said softly. Then something shifted, like an invisible thread snapped. She turned back to the stove and resumed stirring as if nothing had happened. But Daniel couldn't move. Not yet. Not after seeing the weight she carried like armor. That night, Emily went to bed early. Daniel stayed behind in the dining room. The lights were low. The house was quiet. He stared at the recipe notebook she'd left on the table, open to a page that was barely holding together. Crease smudged, nearly torn in half. He carefully flipped through the pages. Some were in perfect cursive, others scribbled in frantic shorthand. A few had little drawings in the margins, tiny herbs arrows, a stick figure wearing a chef's hat. One page had a heart drawn beside a soup recipe. Another had been stained with coffee, or maybe wine. At the back in faded ink were the words, "Cook with love, even if no one eats it." Daniel read the line again, then again, and again. It hit him harder than he expected. Because this wasn't just food. This was her soul on paper. A quiet cry to still matter, even in obscurity. The next morning, Emily came downstairs, her hair slightly damp from a shower, wearing a loose sweater, and jeans Lily had helped her borrow from Daniel's late wife's closet. But she stopped cold when she reached the kitchen. On the counter, her notebook sat open, to that torn page. Only now it wasn't torn. It had been restored, delicately repaired, flattened the ink, redrawn, the whole page placed in a clear archival sleeve. She pressed her hand to her mouth. Daniel stood near the sink with a mug in hand. I know a guy, he said simply. Emily walked forward slowly, her fingertips trembling as she touched the page. That was the last recipe my mom gave me, she whispered. She passed away not long after. I thought it was gone forever. Daniel didn't step closer. He just looked at her and said, some memories deserve a second chance. Just like people. Emily looked up at him, and something cracked behind her eyes, not in pain, but in release. She had spent years believing she was worthless, unwanted, discarded. But this man, a stranger just months ago, had seen her, had preserved her. Not for publicity, not for gratitude, but simply because he believed she mattered. And that was the beginning of everything. Spring came early that year in Millfield. By April, the trees along Main Street had begun to bud, and the air no longer bit at the skin, but whispered promises of renewal. The snow had melted, the streets had cleared, and in the Cooper household, life had quietly blossomed into something unspoken, but undeniable. Emily was no longer a guest. Not really. She cooked dinners without asking, folded laundry that wasn't hers, wrote Lily's lunch notes with little hearts and silly jokes. Daniel watched it all unfold like a slow sunrise he hadn't realized he needed. He still hadn't told her how he felt. Not directly, but in the way he brought her a new apron one day, soft blue embroidered with her initials. In the way he stopped working late and chose instead to sit at the kitchen island watching her stir soup and laugh with Lily. They weren't a couple, but they weren't strangers either. They were becoming something, but becoming doesn't always have time to bloom before the storm arrives. It started with a click. Emily had stepped outside the house early one morning in April, Lily's pink backpack slung over her shoulder, preparing to walk her to the bus stop. Daniel stood at the front door, sipping coffee, still in sweatpants and a hoodie. Lily danced down the steps, singing something off-key. Emily laughed. It was one of those moments, pure, ordinary, beautiful, until a man across the street raised a camera. The shutter snapped twice, click, click, then he turned and vanished before Daniel could shout. Emily's stiffened instincts sharp. She'd been seen. By noon, the photos had already begun circulating. Daniel's assistant called in a panic. Daniel, you're trending. Everywhere. There's a photo of that woman, Emily, with Lily outside your house. No context. No you. The headlines are bad. Daniel opened his laptop. The image was unmistakable. Emily bundled in Lily's coat, Lily hugging her waist, a mansion in the background. The headline blared, "Millionaire Dad's New Nanny or Secret Lover, Former Homeless Woman, Spotted Leaving CEO's Home." Beneath it, speculation, mockery, cruel comments. Classic gold digger play. She's using the kid to lock in the inheritance. From dumpster to diamonds. And worse, much worse. Daniel slammed the laptop shut just as Emily walked into his office. She had already seen it. Her hands trembled. Her eyes wide and far away weren't surprised. Just crushed. "I knew this would happen," she said softly. "I'll fix it," Daniel said instantly. "My PR team will—" "No," she interrupted, backing away. "You can't fix this." "Yes, I can." Emily shook her head, arms crossed tight across her chest. "You don't understand. This isn't just gossip. This undermines everything. Your reputation, your company, Lily. I don't give a damn what people think." "You should," she snapped, then stopped herself. Her voice dropped. "You've built something honest. You're trusted. You give back. And now people are calling you a fool. They're calling me a parasite." Daniel stepped forward. "I don't care about them. I care about you." Emily's voice cracked. "That's exactly why I have to go." "No," he whispered. "Don't do this." "I'm not what you need," she said. "Not in your world. I was never meant to stay." She turned before he could stop her. The packing took 10 minutes. There wasn't much. The clothes Lily had picked out, the beat-up shoes, the battered recipe book, a hairbrush, a photo Lily had drawn, stick figures labeled, "Me Daddy Emily." Daniel stood frozen in the hallway as she zipped her small duffel bag. "En de man wissing de baumverstoel." She didn't cry. That was the worst part. She moved like someone trained for loss. Clean, efficient, prepared. Lily came running down the stairs, clutching her mended stuffed bear. "Where are you going?" she asked, her eyes wide. Emily knelt, her hands shaking. "I have to go, sweetheart." "No," Lily whispered. "No, your family." Emily hugged her tightly, tears silently slipping down her cheeks. "You are the best thing that's happened to me in a very long time. Never forget that." Lily clung to her. "Emily, please don't go." Emily slowly stood, kissed Lily's forehead, then turned to Daniel. He was pale, fists clenched, eyes rimmed with disbelief. "Thank you," she said, voice barely audible, "for everything. But this is as far as I go." Daniel took a step forward. "Emily, wait." But she was already gone. The front door clicked shut. Snow was falling again, light and soft. Daniel rushed outside barefoot, sprinting to the end of the driveway. But by the time he reached the curb, she was gone. Just footprints in the snow and silence. That night the house was too quiet, too still. Lily sat at the window, her face pressed to the glass. She didn't even say goodbye to Bear. She whispered, her voice trembling. Daniel knelt beside her, pulled her into his arms, and for the first time in years, he cried, not because he didn't see it coming, but because it had come anyway. Because sometimes, no matter how much warmth you pour into something, people leave. And the silence they leave behind is the loudest thing in the world. The house felt colder. It wasn't the weather, though March had returned with an unexpected frost, but something deeper, a hollowness that clung to the corners of every room like a shadow that wouldn't lift. Emily had been gone for 2 weeks, and each morning, since Lily asked the same question with the same tired, tear-frayed voice, "Where is she?" Daniel would pause, spoon hovering over the cereal bowl, and reply as gently as he could, "She had to go, sweetheart." But why, Lily would whisper, staring at the spoon she never used. Didn't she love us? Daniel's throat always closed around the answer, because nothing he could say made sense to a 6-year-old who had lost her mom, and then lost the woman who had started to feel like another one. And honestly, nothing made sense to him either. He tried to resume life as it had been. Work meetings, conference calls, grocery runs, charity emails, but everything was tinted gray. Lily refused pancakes, wouldn't touch grilled cheese. Even her favorite chocolate chip muffins sat untouched on the counter. One night after putting her to bed, her little arms wrapped tightly around the bear Emily had mended, Daniel wandered into the kitchen, restless. The fridge was full, still stocked the way Emily had organized it, labels out produced neatly stored, leftover herbs, homemade broth in mason jars, carrots, chicken thighs, and on the counter almost daring him sat the recipe book. Her notebook? He hadn't opened it since she left, but tonight he did. The pages were soft from years of turning. Some smelled faintly of rosemary. Others had notes scribbled in the margins. Add lemon zest for brightness. Try with almond milk instead. Lily likes this one. Remember to cut the carrots small. His fingers stopped on a familiar title, Carrot Time Soup. The same one she made on her second night. The same one his wife used to make. The one that made him believe Emily wasn't just a visitor. She knew the heart of the house. And now that heart felt quiet, empty. Daniel closed his eyes, then rolled up his sleeves. He peeled carrots, too thick. He spilled the broth, twice. He burned the time, but he kept going. He followed her notes every step, shaky, unsure. He chopped like she did, stirred like she did, and remembered how she'd taste and tweak always with a smile or a hum under her breath. He did none of that, just silence, and the slow bubbling of something trying to come back to life. When the soup was ready, it was far from perfect. A little lumpy, a bit too salty, but the kitchen smelled like home, and that was something. Daniel ladled 2 bowls, set them at the table. He hesitated at the stairs, then called softly, Lily dinner. Warmed when is stånd dar. A pause, then the sound of small feet padding down the steps. She climbed into her chair without a word, stared at the bowl, sniffed, and took one tiny spoonful. Then another. She looked up at him, cheeks pink, eyes wide. A small smile broke across her face. The first in days. It tastes like love, she whispered. Daniel's heart cracked open. He looked down at the mess he'd made in the kitchen, and for the first time in weeks, he smiled too. Not even close to hers, he said. Lily nodded, spoon still in hand. But it's okay. Love can still taste different. That night after Lily had gone to bed, Daniel sat in the living room flipping through Emily's notebook again. The pages breathed life, recipes for healing, notes like prayers. On the last page there was a torn corner where her mother's handwriting had once been. Next to it, in newer ink, Daniel's ink, he had scribbled one simple line. Even from hunger, love can grow. He stared at it for a long time, then grabbed his phone. He pulled up every local shelter listing, every soup kitchen registry, every food bank log. He emailed 3 former interns who worked in social services. He called 2 donors who ran housing programs. He even got in his car at midnight and drove down streets he hadn't visited in years, alleys near shelters, corners near outreach centers, anywhere she might have gone, anywhere she might be trying to hide. He left notes, gave his number, shared her photo. No last name. No questions, just one line. Please tell her we're still here. Tell her Lily misses her. 2 weeks passed, no answer. Then 4, still silence, but Daniel kept searching. Every night after Lily was asleep, he'd sit with her notebook and imagine what Emily would be making if she were here. He made roasted rosemary potatoes. Too dry. He made her lavender tea cake. Overbaked. He tried her cheddar biscuits. Too flat. But Lily always took a bite. Always said the same thing. It tastes like love. And that was enough to keep trying. Because somewhere out there, a woman was walking with her coat too thin, carrying a notebook full of dreams. And Daniel had promised himself he would not let her disappear into silence. Not this time. Not again. 12 months had passed. 12 long, quiet months since that snow-covered Christmas Eve when Emily first entered Daniel's world like a whisper in the dark. And 12 even longer months since she left it vanishing into the cold as quietly as she came. But Daniel hadn't stopped hoping. Not once. Everywhere he went, he looked for her. Every meal he made, he thought of her. Every time Lily pointed at the door and asked, "Do you think she'll come back today?" he knelt beside her and said, "I hope so." And now, on the first anniversary of her leaving, Daniel was hosting his annual Christmas gala for community aid. A tradition that once served as a PR exercise but had become something far more personal. This year, the theme was Dignity Not Charity. He'd spent months planning every detail, not because he needed the spotlight, but because somewhere in the back of his heart, he was still waiting. Waiting for a miracle he didn't dare say out loud. The event hall shimmered with soft gold lights. The smell of cinnamon, fresh bread, and roasted meats warmed the air. Guests mingled under chandeliers, some in gowns and tuxedos, others in second-hand coats invited from the shelters Daniel now quietly supported. Daniel stood near the stage scanning the room. Not for donors, not for press, but for her. And then he saw her. Near the far wall, half hidden in the shadows, stood a woman in a weathered coat with her blonde hair pulled into a low braid. Her hands were tucked in her pockets. Her eyes scanned the crowd nervously like she wasn't sure she belonged. Emily. For a moment, Daniel forgot to breathe. He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. She hadn't changed much, but something in her posture had. She wasn't shrinking like before. She wasn't hiding. She was here. She had come back. Then she saw him. Their eyes met across the crowd, and time stopped. Her expression shifted. Recognition, then hesitation. She turned as if to leave, but Daniel didn't wait. He stepped off the stage mid-speech, ignoring startled glances brushing past servers and guests. "Emily," he called out. She stopped. Didn't turn. He reached her and without a word wrapped his arms around her. Gasps rippled through the room. Emily stiffened, then melted against his chest. "I shouldn't have come," she whispered. "You had to," he replied. "Because I need to do this. Here, where everyone can see." He pulled something from the inside pocket of his coat. A hardbound book, rustic cover, soft gold foil lettering. Emily blinked, unsure what she was seeing. He placed it gently in her hands. She looked down. "Recipes from the Streets" by Emily Monroe. Her breath hitched. "What is this?" Daniel smiled softly. "Your recipes, your notes, your life. I found a publisher. All I did was clean up the pages. The heart. That's all you..." She flipped open the book with trembling hands. Inside every recipe she'd scribbled in despair, every margin note, every coffee stain preserved with care. There in the front, to the ones who've been forgotten. "You're still cooking, still surviving, and that means something." Emily covered her mouth, eyes flooding. "Noah," she whispered. But he cut her off, gently cupping her face. "You didn't just save Lily that night, you saved me too." The crowd had gathered around, unsure what they were witnessing, but knowing it was something real. Some clapped, some wiped away tears. Others simply stood in silence as the room filled with the quiet weight of something beautiful. Daniel took her hand. "Come back home," he said. Emily shook her head slightly. "People still talk. I still don't fit in your world." Daniel smiled. "Then I'll build a new one," he said. "One with space for you, for everything you bring." A small laugh broke through her tears. "She still calls me her snow angel, doesn't she?" Daniel chuckled. "Every time she eats soup." Emily looked around the room. Guests in suits, others in threadbare jackets. People laughing, some crying. People who had never stood side by side before, until now. She looked back at Daniel and nodded. "I've missed home." Later that night, after the gala ended and guests had slowly filtered out into the snowy night, Emily stood alone by the windows of the event hall. The snow fell softly, blanketing the streets in silver. Lily came running across the room, her pink coat now slightly too small, arms stretched wide. "Emily." Emily dropped to her knees just in time to catch her in a tight hug. "You came back," Lily squealed. "I never stopped thinking about you," Emily said, her voice cracking. "I made your soup," Lily said proudly. "I helped Daddy. It was lumpy, but I said it still tasted like love." Emily laughed through her tears. It always does. Daniel watched them from a distance, his heart finally at rest. Because the pieces were falling back into place. Not like they were before, but stronger, better, together. The garden behind Daniel's house had never looked more alive. Snow still hugged the bare branches, and the grass was dusted white like powdered sugar. But the space glowed with life. Tiny lanterns dangled from tree limbs. Rows of white folding chairs arched around a simple wooden trellis wrapped in ivy and twinkling lights. The scent of cinnamon-baked apples and roasted rosemary floated from the kitchen windows, curling through the cold air like a hymn. It was 2 weeks after the gala. Emily stood in a simple ivory dress, her blonde hair falling in soft waves around her shoulders, a sprig of rosemary tucked behind one ear. She wore no veil, no diamonds. Just a smile that radiated through the wintry air. Lily stood beside her, cheeks rosy, her tiny hands gripping a wicker basket of white rose petals. She bounced with excitement, her red scarf flapping like a banner of joy. "Ready?" Emily asked, kneeling to adjust her flower crown. Lily grinned. It's time. She skipped down the makeshift aisle, tossing petals into the air like snowflakes. Mommy's getting married, she called out. Daniel stood at the end of the aisle beneath the arch. His suit was slightly wrinkled, his tie crooked. Lily had insisted on tying it herself. But his eyes never left Emily. Not for a second. The music faded. Emily stepped forward slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. Not from nerves, but disbelief. She had been lost, starving, unseen. Now she was here. Loved, held, home. As she reached the altar, Daniel took her hand. His fingers were cold. His smile was warm. Their vows weren't grand. There was no orchestra, no crowd of 100 guests. Just quiet promises spoken with tea-warmed voices handwritten the night before on the backs of recipe cards. I didn't know what was missing until you left, Daniel said, his voice thick. And when I couldn't find you, I realized you weren't a guest in our home. You were the home. Emily's voice wavered as she replied, You didn't just see me when no one else did. You gave me the space to believe I could be more than broken. When the officiant said, You may kiss the bride, Lily clapped wildly. And whine. Yay. Now we're a family for real. Laughter rippled across the yard. Emily bent to kiss Lily's forehead, before rising to kiss Daniel soft and sure beneath the falling snow. The reception wasn't glamorous, but it was magic. Long wooden tables were set in the backyard beneath gently blinking string lights. Guests wrapped in knit scarves and borrowed coats filled the seats. Neighbors, friends, volunteers from the shelters, a few of Emily's former students from the local soup kitchen. Hot cider steamed from ceramic mugs. Crockpots lined the porch railing, brimming with Stu's chili and Emily's famous cheddar biscuits. There was no DJ, just a man in the corner strumming a guitar with mittened fingers, while children twirled across the lawn, scarves flying behind them like capes. Emily moved through the crowd like sunlight, hugging old friends from the shelters, laughing with women who'd once shared bunks with her greeting teenagers, who now dreamed of becoming chefs. She had come full circle, from hungry to healer. 3 months earlier, just days after their reunion, Daniel and Emily had opened The Hearth, a community kitchen 5 blocks from the bakery where they first met. During the day, it served hot meals to those in need. At night, it transformed into a classroom. Emily taught cooking, yes, but more than that, she taught dignity, how to chop onions with purpose, how to taste carefully, how to plate food like it mattered, because they mattered. And they believed her, because she had lived it. As the evening drew to a close, Daniel stood by the fireplace inside the house, holding Lily on one hip, while Emily rested her head on his shoulder. The Christmas tree twinkled in the corner. Handmade ornaments swayed gently from its branches. On the mantel above the fire, a delicate frame hung, a single-stained recipe page preserved in glass. The last one her mother had written. Underneath it, a small brass plaque read, Even from hunger, love can grow. Emily looked up at it and smiled. She kissed Lily's forehead and whispered, Merry Christmas, sweetheart. Lily murmured sleepily, Best Christmas ever. Daniel looked at them, his wife, his daughter, his peace, and in that quiet glow of firelight, he knew. This wasn't just a second chance. It was the beginning of everything. Some stories begin with grand gestures. Others begin with a whisper, a quiet act of kindness no one notices at first. This one began on a snowy Christmas Eve with a little girl asking, Can she have dinner with us? From that simple question grew a journey of redemption, trust, and love. A single moment of compassion cracked open 2 guarded hearts, one grieving in silence, the other forgotten by the world, and let something beautiful pour in. Emily didn't walk into Daniel and Lily's life like a hero. She came in tired, hungry, uncertain, but through her food, her presence, and her unwavering spirit, she rebuilt more than meals. She rebuilt hope. Daniel, a man who had buried his heart under routine and loss, found it beating again in her laughter, her recipes, her steady hands. Lily, a child who lost a mother, too soon found a snow angel who stayed, not just for dinner, but for life. Their story reminds us that home isn't walls or wealth. It's warmth. It's trust. It's the choice to believe again even after heartbreak. It reminds us that even from hunger, love can grow. And maybe most importantly, it reminds us that sometimes the people we rescue are the very ones who save us in return. So if you're standing at the edge of something broken, something you think can't be repaired, look again. Someone somewhere might be holding a tattered notebook of dreams. And you might be their reason to believe again. Because in the end, love doesn't need a perfect beginning. Just a second chance.